My girlfriend's childhood friend, deliberately mistranslated everything I said to her father, telling him I called Japanese food disgusting and his company a joke. He was furious until I surprised everyone by telling him the truth in perfect Japanese, by destroying his favorite employee with perfect Japanese. Before my girlfriend Mika first brought me to meet her father at his company in Japan, I was terrified. She had told me dozens of stories about how traditional he was. One time, a foreign employee showed up to a meeting 5 minutes late, and her dad still calls him Late Larry 3 years later. Another time, someone poured soy sauce directly on their rice at a company dinner, and her dad muttered, Yabanjin, barbarian, under his breath. The worst part? Her dad was also going to be my boss. Mika promised he'd hire me at his trading company, but I was still scared, because I was a purebred American, and I knew it was a big dream of his for Mika to marry a Japanese businessman. In the months leading up to meeting him, I spent 2 hours every day in a Japanese setting to learn the culture. Business hotels, office districts, even corporate drinking parties. So when the time came, I had practically formed a script in my head of how to act and speak. Mika, of course, didn't know any of this. I kept it a secret because I didn't want her to think I was desperate. When the day came, I walked into the restaurant and bowed at exactly the right angle when introduced. I waited for him to sit first, poured his beer immediately, and responded properly to everything. I called him Shacho and kept my mouth shut unless spoken to. I knew things were going well when his secretary kept refilling my tea, smiling about how polite I was. And her dad didn't speak English, but it really seemed like he liked me too. He would nod every time I said hi, yes, at the right moments, and complained about young people these days as if I wasn't American. Now, you're probably wondering how I understood what he was saying. Well, I went behind Mika's back. While studying Japanese business culture, I started taking intensive Japanese lessons. I didn't want to say anything about it because I wanted to surprise her at our wedding. So up until this point, it had been around 6 months of lessons, and I could hear how well Mr. Tanaka was speaking of me to his secretary. Mika was practically glowing with pride. I had no idea that it was the calm before the storm, because there was just one person who made it abundantly clear that I was an unwanted guest, and that was Hiro, Mika's childhood friend who worked at the company. He constantly made snide remarks in English about how I was taking advantage of the boss's daughter, made jokes about how I was probably just here for a visa, but I was convinced that I would win him over eventually, and just shrugged it off. But the next time I was there for a big client dinner, things had completely changed. When me and Mika showed up at the private room, her dad barely acknowledged me and asked Mika in Japanese, Nande gaijin ga daiji na shudan ni kite runda? Why is the foreigner here for important business? Mika looked just as confused as me, but just rolled her eyes before we sat down. The clients arrived and Mr. Tanaka served everyone premium sushi and wagyu beef. Meanwhile, he pointed me to a plate of natto mixed with raw squid and fermented fish guts. There was so much that the smell made everyone shift away from me, and just before I could ask for rice to mix it with, Mr. Tanaka turned to Mika and said, Kore wa itsumo Kenji no ichiban suki data. This was always Kenji's favorite. That's when everything made sense. Kenji was her Japanese ex from university, and he worked at Mitsubishi